It took a lot to upstage the wheel, but machines like this had an equally dramatic and certainly a quicker impact upon mankind. It's a steam engine, built in Cornwall in the 1820s and installed on the banks of the Thames at Kew to pump fresh running water to Londoners for the very first time. Men no longer had to pump and carry water by hand. It was the beginning of a new age, the age of mechanization, when machines replaced muscle. Londoners of 150 years ago probably failed to realize the significance of the Industrial Revolution in their midst. And is the same thing happening to us today? A new breed of machines is upon us. Another revolution has begun. Unlike the steam engine, these machines don't need men to control them. They're robot welders in a Swedish car factory. They can be taught things. They will learn. Above all, they'll remember.
This is normally a robot paint sprayer, only we've adapted it to show you how it works and stuck a pen on the end. Now, what I'm going to try and do here is to write my own name. Now, what is actually happening is that I'm programming the machine because it's got a memory. And the memory is recording every single unsteady movement of the pen.
Once I've taught the robot to behave the way I want, it'll control itself, imitating my original movements exactly. Its memory gives the machine this ability to repeat things so precisely. It can do this over and over again, accurately every time. Intelligent machines are now available as standard office equipment. They not only store information and repeat it like the robots, but they can select from their memories too. The secretary is making alterations to a standard letter, one that needs a personal touch. When the machine prints, its computer searches through its memory, the names, addresses, and other personal details. It then automatically inserts these into each letter, and every one is different. This would have been a long, laborious job for a team of secretaries, and not even the fastest typist would be capable of this. Ink is sprayed at the paper at enormous speed.
Now, just like the robot, which could remember to write my name, that machine, which is a word processor, is all part of a new technology. It's sort of crept up on us in recent years, and it's simply been made possible by this little thing. It's called a silicon chip. Now, if it wasn't for the chip, things we now take for granted wouldn't have been possible, like my digital watch or the pocket calculator, which you can buy in the high street for just a few pounds. And whatever happened to the men and women who manufactured this old-fashioned thing, now that their skills have been made redundant? New micro gimmicks are flooding the market. This machine translates English into French or French into Italian, Italian into Greek. What about this? It's a calculator, a watch, a stopwatch, and this is how it wakes you up in the morning. Now, if you listen to the experts, they say that because of this chip, startling changes are going to be made in all our lives, the way we live, work, and play. But how dramatic a revolution is it going to be? Just what is this technology going to mean to us?
I think the main significance is that it's going to make computer power available on a scale that's never been available before. In other words, the computer is going to become one of the most common pieces of technology on Earth.
In my opinion, the advent of microelectronics and its inherent power of logic may be the biggest single blessing that mankind has ever had.
It's everywhere. Try and think of one process other than a few personal services where you won't use silicon chip technology, and you'll be very hard put to find it.
The first electronic computers were made in the 1940s, and they needed valves to make their calculations. Now, the thing about valves is that they are not particularly reliable. You'll remember the old radio sets. They're enormously expensive, these things. It's just one section that you're looking at now of an early computer. It weighed 30 tons, and it was 150 square yards in size, and it didn't work particularly well. But by the late 1940s, this had arrived on the scene, and it totally changed the future of computers. It's a transistor, and it replaced the valves. And this is one of the earliest transistor radios, made by a then little-known company called Sony. Now, when they started putting transistors into computers, it made them more powerful and more reliable. I suppose this is everyone's idea of what a computer should look like. It was made in the 1950s, and it was used for controlling guided missiles. And the problem with these things is that every transistor had to be linked by wire, and they did it by hand, and it made them enormously expensive. But by the 1960s, someone had thought it would be a good idea to put more than one transistor on a single slice of silicon. That's an element found in sand. And they started building these integrated circuits onto the silicon, and now we call them silicon chips. Now, it would have been a normal evolutionary process in science, but over the last decade, the number of circuits you could get on one little bit of silicon has doubled each year. And when you're dealing with figures like this, it isn't an evolution anymore, it's a revolution. People like Rita Walker, who was a secretary and a housewife, have been specially trained in recent years to make chips. Most people assume that California is the chip center of the world. In fact, they even have a place there called Silicon Valley. But you don't have to go to America to see chips being made. This is Mullards of Southampton, and here 300 people work in these antiseptic, dust-free conditions, hence the Dr. Kildare outfit. Now, they manufacture about 10 million chips a year for TV sets, TV games, washing machines, even CFAX, the BBC's information service. Now, this is their latest chip, or what it looks like to the naked eye. And here it is, highly magnified, a complicated maze of microscopic electronic circuits.
We start off with a slice of silicon, like this. And what we have to do is to locally introduce into that slice of silicon impurities which are very carefully controlled in concentration. We also have to put them in specific places on the silicon in accurate registration one with another.
The slice goes through about 70 different processes. First, it's heated in a furnace to create a protective layer. Even during inspection, no one touches it because the slightest smudge would ruin it. The surface is covered in a photographic emulsion, and a microscopic image is lined up and exposed onto it with an ultraviolet light. After it's developed, the image is burned out with chemicals, and then atomic particles are fired through the holes into the silicon. This forms the pattern of a new substance on the surface. And this kind of process is repeated over and over again, creating layer after layer of electrical circuits.
Well, this here is in fact the final complete slice, which has got all the various impurities put together in it to form transistors, the things that go to make up transistor radios, that is, diodes, resistors, all the various electronic components which we fit together in an integrated circuit and connect up.
So each one of those little sort of squares or rectangles is a chip, is it?
That's a silicon chip.
Each little chip has its thousands of circuits electronically tested. Some of them fail the test, but those that pass are wired up. When divided up, each one is then packaged up into its own now familiar plastic container.
This is basically a microcomputer board. It's today's version of the old computer, which used to take up a whole room, if you like, in the old technology which used radio valves. This uses modern solid-state circuits, so it has the central processor unit, it has memory, which we call a random access memory, and it has other sorts of memory, which we call read-only memory. But the whole thing is, in fact, one complete computer. And indeed, although this may look modern, we are now making computers which have got all the memory on board in one integrated circuit, which looks just like that. So we have now already replaced this board with something within that one chip.
The technology for manufacturing chips is improving all the time. The next development is to draw the circuits using beams of electrons or X-rays rather than photographic masks. The point of this is they'll be able to get even more components onto one chip. Just on the market is a thing called the 64K, which has got 64,000 bits of memory. And it won't be too long before they'll be able to manufacture a chip no bigger than that with 1 million bits of memory. They're forecasting that the year that'll be available has been anticipated for some time, 1984.
Now, a microprocessor is really nothing more than an extremely small computer, absolutely minute. And this confers certain enormous advantages on it. The first is that because it's very small, you can mass produce it, and because you can mass produce it, it becomes immensely cheap. I mean, shortly one will be able to buy powerful computers, which once upon a time would have cost £1 million, literally. You'll be able to buy these for a matter of pennies. Now, it also means that because you reduce the computer in size and it becomes a solid-state device rather than something made up of lots of transistors, it becomes almost infinitely reliable. It's got no moving parts, so once you start it going, it'll go on working indefinitely. So computers are going to become widespread, extremely cheap, very much more powerful, and almost totally reliable.
The computer's a simple little cell, really. A fast mover, but only capable of thinking one thing at a time. But what goes on inside his tiny brain? Suppose he comes up to a green traffic light. His eye or sensor sends that information to the processor, which then stores it. His instructions, or his program, are stored in another memory. The processor looks up the instructions and decides what to do with the information. If the light's green, the program says keep going. But if it's red, the computer on a chip has thousands and thousands of tiny switches. You can see them here. And just like your light switch at home, each single transistor switch can be only on or off. Under the electron microscope, you can watch the switches operating on the chip. At full speed, each one can operate millions of times a second. And the way computers think is like this too. They deal in simple alternatives. Yes or no, do this or do that. And this little fellow's instructions are just like any computer's program. Simple steps, simple choices. Stop. Check the lights. Is the light green? Yes or no? If no, then stop. If yes, then go. But of course, the computer is only as good as its program. Soon, every home could have its own computer. They're already on sale in the high street, in shops like this for a few £100s. And it's a rapidly growing market for small businessmen and enthusiasts who can come here to learn how they work. Serge Lowry used to be an accountant. Now he runs a South London shop.
Now, right. I prefer this ham myself because it's cooked with the...
6 months ago, he borrowed a home computer to see how useful it might be even in a business as small as his. A commercial company supplied the program to help him with his bookkeeping.
It has been known to go wrong, yes. Connections come undone and it doesn't work, and there is a fault on the program as well, which it took me about a month or two to discover it wasn't me being stupid, but was actually a fault on the program.
In the future, I mean, say the program was right, the equipment was right, what benefit do you think it should be for people like you, small businessmen?
I think it would save a tremendous amount of time. That's what it's done for me. And the other thing it would do is produce information very quickly. I've just finished my first year's trading, actually, and I produced my accounts for the year in a perfectly good form for audit within 3 days of the end of the year, and that's really marvellous.
You look like you're quite happy about it. I mean, is it fun or what?
It is quite fun, yes. It's better than slaving over a hot ledger or whatever. It's not fun. It's interesting.
Video TV games were among the first commercial crazes to result from the new technology. In this laboratory, they're using a big computer to work out the program for a new video game. When they're happy with it, it's frozen onto a chip, and this is then copied by the million. A mass-produced chip like that, with a program designed for just one purpose, controls this electronic model car. It's not radio-controlled, as you might think, but uses an infrared beam. It's made in Britain, and the makers claim it's the first in the world controlled by microprocessors.
Now, a few years ago, the computers operating this little model would have been so big that you could have hardly have got them inside a double-decker bus. Now a child has at his command 2 highly sophisticated computers.
Last year, 50% of new toys sold in America were based on microelectronics. The revolution's coming to the big cars as well. On this test track near Birmingham, Lucas, the car component firm, are testing how computers will affect the cars of the 1980s. On parade, a line of cars, each with something different to show.
This car has been fitted with digital electronic ignition. Basically, it allows the fuel to be used more efficiently. In very simple terms, it keeps the engine more precisely tuned. That's in this vehicle, and the car behind me has got another new device. This Jag's got digital fuel injection. It cuts down on fuel consumption and also on the amount of poisonous smoke which goes into the atmosphere through the exhaust. The car behind me has got a system which will even tell you what's going on inside. The Ford's got an early warning system controlled by a chip. On this display unit is all I need to know about the liquids inside the car, the water, the oil and the fuel. This car's got an electric display unit, which tells me how fast I'm going, the revs, how much fuel I've got, the oil pressure, and also the temperature of the water. What they've done is to transfer the principle of the digital watch onto the front of your dashboard.
Well, the ultimate will be a car almost virtually under electronic control. Not one large onboard computer, perhaps 3 smaller ones for safety reasons, so that if one fails, you still have 2 to keep the car going. But a set of microcomputers which virtually can drive the car more effectively, manage the engine, tell the driver of any impending failures and so on. The only thing that probably won't be taken away from his control will be the steering and the essential braking.
You've got to let him do something.
Got to let him do something. But of course, we can't in future afford people to have their foot jammed hard down on the traffic lights, spin the wheels away and waste fuel and strip off rubber. This is no longer on with a world which is getting shorter of gasoline.
Almost any mechanical process can be controlled by microelectronics. Jackknifing, always a possibility in the wet, is responsible for the majority of accidents to heavy goods lorries. But sensors can be attached to the wheels. If anyone is about to lock, then the sensor notifies a microprocessor inside the lorry. It releases the brake pressure and this time prevents the jackknife skid. It's been possible for some time to telephone from a car, but never quite like this. From a car in downtown Chicago, I can call anywhere in the world, like the BBC office in New York, which is 800 miles away.
Good afternoon, BBC.
Hello, Jim. It's Bernard Falk here in Chicago. Can you hear me?
I'm hearing you very well.
I'm speaking to you from the middle of a car in Chicago, surrounded by tall buildings, and it's a lovely sunny day. What's it like in New York?
It's a beautiful day in New York, in the mid-70s, hardly a cloud in the sky, and I hear you remarkably well. There is no fading at all.
Thank you very much indeed, Jim. Goodbye. Now, that sort of quality is only possible because of the microprocessors. There's a central computer here in Chicago, and there are 10 transmitters, each with a computer as well, dotted around the city. And I've got a microprocessor in the boot of this car. Now, wherever I am in this city, it doesn't matter whether I'm blocked off by tall buildings, the central computer will home in my phone call into the strongest possible signal. Now, what this new system will do is to allow many more people to have mobile phones because it'll offer them many more frequencies. And it's also beautiful quality. And it's the first real step towards what will be total mobile phones. That's the sort that you'll carry around in your pocket.
In America, telephones come in many different shapes and sizes. In America, telephones are fun. But because of microelectronics, we now have the first intelligent phones. They store numbers, dial them for you, and an even more dramatic revolution within the telephone system will enable an enormous amount of information to be transmitted by computers as well as people across the telephone lines.
Here in Britain, we're not so far behind the Americans as you might think. In many ways, we're ahead. This is a new application for the new technology developed by the Post Office, and it's called PressTel. The Post Office has a data bank, a central computer which stores information. And by using two familiar objects, the television set and the telephone, I can receive that information. I dial the information by pressing little numbers on this. And I can receive information about train times, what's happening in the world, the news, the stocks and shares index, but you can also use it for a form of armchair shopping. Simply by dialing into this, I can order wine from a wine club. By pressing 4, it tells me what's on offer. I think I'll have a crate of the Chateau Talbot at a mere £250, and I could even pay for it by dialing in the numbers of my credit card. It may make you a little bit lazy, but isn't it convenient? With this vast increase in people communicating with each other, the present telephone system probably couldn't cope with it. So, a new technology has come along to cope with the new technology. This laboratory is owned by Bell, the telephone people, and the people who also invented the transistor. And here they're manufacturing a very thin glass fiber. This is what it'll look like, and the light's coming from a laser. Now, until now, lasers have been very expensive, but this is the poor man's first laser system. It fits inside the telephone, and it's a very tiny, active laser, about the size of a grain of salt. It's possible right now with a fibre this thin to transmit 320 simultaneous two-way telephone conversations. And theoretically, you could get onto something this thin every single phone conversation going on right now in the whole of North America.
One day, microelectronics could even control the average family house. This ranch-style home in a Chicago suburb is controlled by a computer.
Hello. Hi, how are you? Good to see you. Come on in.
It's a futuristic, micro-driven house that Dick built, namely Dick Brodner, a millionaire plastics manufacturer who likes to do things in style.
Turn that off for you.
That's your television set, is it?
Yes, it is.
You do everything in sort of large scale in America, don't you?
Well, we like to see things in a big way.
When Dick decided to build his dream house, he wanted it to be computer-controlled. £250,000 later, he had a home of the future.
Well, we have in the basement 2 microcomputers, and they are hooked up to a series of relays, and everything in the house is pretty well controlled under a low-voltage system.
So you can use your computers for, say, controlling the lights?
We control the lights, we can control the heat, but as an example, we can turn the lights off outside, and we can turn them back on.
What about energy, saving energy?
Well, one of the purposes of the computer, of course, was to work it so that we could control the heat and the air conditioning in the house.
And how does that work?
We have probes in the walls, which, when there are people involved on a summer day and it's warm, it will automatically bring the air conditioning up. If there are people or all out of the house, the probes will sense it and automatically drop the air conditioning down so that we don't have the air conditioning running when there's nobody at home.
Why did you do it?
Well, one of the reasons, of course, was for the money end of it, if we could save some money on energy, but actually, we've done it because the difference between men and boys is the size and the value of their toys.
How does the computer operate out here?
We have sensors in the pool, and if a child or someone or something should fall into the pool, the alarm goes off and the lights go on outside.
What about general security?
We have sensors in our driveways, we have sensors in our doors, and we also have a complete fire alarm system.
Of course, Dick built his house for Judith too, and their sons.
Judith, this looks like an ordinary kitchen, but in fact it's a computer kitchen as well, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Mm-hmm.
How do you operate it?
Well, as you see the TV screen here, I have recipes programmed onto the screen so that while I'm cooking, I can just glance over at the screen and see what ingredients I'm supposed to use.
Yeah.
And then this is a magnetic induction cooktop. Better take this off. It seems to be boiling rather rapidly now.
And of course you've got normal microwave cookers.
I
and all the
have,
rest.
yes, And I find that there's a lot of labor-saving devices that I can use with the computer.
Do you use it for anything else?
Yes, we use the computer for storing phone numbers, addresses, friends' birthdays and anniversaries, so there's no excuse for forgetting occasions. I'm really thrilled by it. I'm in awe, I must say, of it, and I'm enjoying it.
How you doing, guys?
All right.
The basement of Dick's house is also a playroom, and naturally his family play electronic games. But it's also where he stores his computer.
In essence, it really doesn't have to be this intricate or this complicated. The actual cost of the computer is fairly minimal, and for the things that you would need or the average person might want, it would fit very well into the realm of conceivability for an average person, an average working person.
Yeah, you're right.
If the electronic house may seem a long way off, bizarre even, Microelectronics is beginning to creep into all our lives. The mass-produced chips in high street products have been the first obvious signs. But the biggest impact is often unnoticed behind the scenes.
This is a psychiatric hospital, the Royal Edinburgh, and the introduction of new technology has just reduced an enormous amount of the laborious, time-wasting effort which goes into one aspect of looking after the hospital's patients.
Patients at this hospital are now allowed home at weekends. It's part of a rehabilitation scheme. But they must take their drugs with them, often small numbers of pills in many different bottles. These pharmacists are preparing the bottles for each patient. Every label has to be typed and carefully checked. It's done by a qualified pharmacist, but to her, it's a laborious, time-wasting job. Now a machine has been installed controlled by microprocessors, and it's taken over the chore of labelling. All the pharmacist has to do is to type in the patient's name. She pushes the buttons for the type of drug, the dosage and quantity. The machine does the printout, all on its own. The hospital's own electronics engineer designed this one-off system, and he built it in only 8 weeks. The hospital had a need, and he satisfied it. So now the silicon factor is appearing everywhere, and yet it's a technology still in its infancy.
What's that, do you think? That's a hedgehog. Now, can you show me which is the cow? Which is the cow there? Pick it up for me. That's the cow, is it? Right. Now, can you see 2 pigs? 2 pigs there. There they are. That's 2 pigs. That's very clever. Now, how many elephants are there?
This little boy not only understands what I'm saying, but he can recognize and pick out the 2 pigs even though they're different in size, shape and color. We take this child's ability to do this completely for granted. But how far can computer control machines imitate what he does so easily?
We haven't touched so far.
At this research laboratory in Surrey, a machine has been taught to recognize and then pick up parts. This is a bit of metal from a tape recorder. The machine looks at it through a television camera above. Through its little cross wires, it sees the outline, identifies that it's the shape it's been programmed to handle. It'll pick it up and put it down into a precise slot.
Well, there are many applications, particularly in the electronics business, where the job of the human operator at the present time is rather repetitive. In fact, we're using the human operator somewhat as a human robot. And this is because the human being has very good sensory perception and good mechanical operations. This kind of machine should be able to deal with situations where the problem is fairly simple and repetitive, but needs information about the position of the parts. Assembly, for example, is a very good example. Simple assembly.
The machine has been taught to reject shapes it doesn't recognize. Put a key into its sight and it acts just like a human faced with an unwelcome intruder. The key is rejected, the machine throws it out. But it could be taught to pick it up.
How intelligent can a robot become?
Well, nobody knows the answer to that question. Most people are interested in how intelligent they can be made in the next few years. And they're wrestling with 2 problems. One is it would be nice to be able to instruct a robot by example, that is, have a robot which is teachable, rather than having everything spelled out for it. And the other is a robot which has the common sense to plan or replan some of its operations in the light of what it knows, instead of the human supervisor having to think out every possible contingency for it.
Robots are already being used in industry, for example in a factory making electric motors. But the concept of an intelligent machine which can recognize shapes and act accordingly has now gone beyond the experimental stage. Since we started filming this program, this type of basic robot has already been overtaken. More sophisticated models which can identify parts have been installed in an American car factory. An even greater challenge is whether we could ever teach machines to obey spoken commands.
This is the Bell Labs Flight Information System. Please dial your identification number.
In a limited way, machines are already being programmed to recognize the human voice.
Please state your flight destination.
San Francisco.
San Francisco. From which airport are you planning to depart?
Newark.
Newark. The following flights are available from Newark to San Francisco from 8 a.m. to 12 noon.
But we are years away before these will be reliable enough to come into general use. After all, this is supposed to reject sounds it doesn't recognize.
On what day of the week are you planning to depart to San Francisco? Saturday. Do you want complete flight descriptions?
That's beautiful.
But I can imagine that speech recognition is going to grow very rapidly. One can do speech recognition in simple ways with very big computers and research programs today. But as integrated circuits get so they can do everything that the big computer can do, it becomes more practical in a real sense. To have, for instance, transcription on your telephone where you can get a typed copy back of what you said. Maybe with not quite proper English, with maybe some mistakes in interpreting what your words were. But it's someplace in the future.
You'll never get a chip to drown out aircraft noise.
That's right, but, well, I'm not sure.
So we've seen that just about anything might be possible with this exploding technology. Think on this. 10 years ago, on the day that Neil Armstrong first stepped onto the moon, if you'd have shown him a digital watch, he wouldn't have understood the technology that went into it. He wouldn't have known how it worked. And it's now forecast that over the next 20 years, there's going to be an even more startling period of change.
We're moving now, or in the early part of the 21st century at any rate, into a stage of benevolent slavery, where people will ride on the backs, instead of on the backs of other people, on the backs of machines.
In the next program, we will look at how the silicon factor will affect industry. The new technology will take over mundane, repetitive jobs, but at what price? Is British industry keeping pace with this micro-revolution? And how much will the chip affect the world in which we work?